Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first panel session of the EU Cyber Forum. We're very happy to have you all today participating online remotely. And I am very pleased to have a distinguished panel with here today for discussing building a global cyber resilience regime. Joined today are great speakers chaired by Eneken Tikk from Finland, in our studio, Juhan Lepassaar from ENISA, Gwenda Fong, who is joining us from Singapore, Katherine Getao, joining us from Kenya, and Rashidah Syed Othman, joining us from Malaysia. A few housekeeping rules first. We invite you to participate in this panel by posing some questions. This is possible to do from the Mentimeter, and the link is also available under the video in the Q&A link. We will come back to your questions at the end of the panel for a 10-15 minute session, Q&A session. But first up, we will hear from our speakers on their ideas for building a global cyber resilience regime. You can also join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag EUCF2020. I will give the floor now to our chair, Eneken Tikk.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So this panel will focus on the question of how these recent changes in our rhythm of life have maybe introduced some further lessons or new lessons to how we digitalize our societies, how we further build the information society. So all panelists have first been asked to elaborate on their COVID-19 experience in terms of digital transition and what they have learned in their respective organizations and countries. I will first turn the floor to our European speakers, to Juhan Lepassaar and Lise Fuhr from European Telecommunications Networks Operations Association, and then proceed to Katherine, the Kenyan perspective, and then to Malaysia and Singapore. So with that, before I then try to dig deeper into the panelists' perspectives with my own questions, please, Juhan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. As I said, I waited for a year at least to be part of the panel where I'm the only male speaker. So it's always a great pleasure to have a diverse panel, but it gives me immense pleasure that we have a diverse panel from different corners of the earth to look at the challenge that we all face in one way or the other, and that is indeed the rapid and very, very deep digitalization of our societies in a very short span of space during the pandemic. And of course, what this has shown us is that we are more and more reliable on the functioning of our digital infrastructure, but at the same time, the way how we use the digital infrastructure has changed. So I bring you one example. There was a study that concluded that the use of the business VPN solutions in Europe increased 160% during the first month of the pandemic. And that means that people turn to more individual customer-oriented solutions rather than using corporate solutions for the digital operations. And that is just one example how the attack surface and the risks during this rapid digitalization broaden from the point of view of cybersecurity. And this is something that is not only happening in Europe, it happens globally. That means, of course, that cyber criminals use this broadened attack surface. In the forthcoming ENISA threat landscape analysis, there is a figure which I will now highlight, which is 667%. And this figure encompasses the increase of phishing attacks during the first month of pandemic. And these are targeted attacks where cyber criminals trying to use this pandemic as an opportunistic way try to capture databases, try to hijack people's data And essentially that shows that there is a lot of work to be done in some of the basic things that we've been talking for decades, but it has never really, I would say, gotten traction in our society. And what is the basic thing is the cyber hygiene. How to operate in the digital environment nowadays in a way that is cyber secure, that makes sure that the risks that are involved in the digital society are well mitigated. In a quite similar fashion that all epidemiologists have been telling us throughout this pandemic, that please wash your hands. In the cyber world, it is the same thing. Please be aware what kind of systems do you use. Is your VPN secure? Is your Wi-Fi secure? Is your laptop secure? These are very basic things in the cyberspace, but these are things that people do not take for granted, and it's not in the forefront of their ideas when they start interlinking or interacting digitally. And this is a global issue. Cyberspace is as strong as the weakest link. So it doesn't only help us if in all corners of the Asians people wash their hands, or in the Latin America. We also need to wash our hands in Europe. And this is a global issue, and the awareness raising is really something that I think we need a global effort in the years to come, but also now. And this is something that the agency in Europe has been doing vis-a-vis the European citizens, the SMEs, the targeted groups, and our member states have been very, very helpful in promoting let's say, safe use of cyberspace nationally. But this is something that we could also do globally, and I'm very happy that the agency will host and promote in 2021 International Cybersecurity Challenge, which is a competition that tries to raise awareness about cybersecurity issues, but also attract young talent into cybersecurity. I'm also very happy that October increasingly is becoming a cybersecurity month globally. We have a number of partners together with the United States that have engaged this year, and I hope that next year it will be really a global event. So, of course, there are a number of other elements that we need to tackle together. We need to look at the overall global framework of cybersecurity. But let's start with the basics. And the basic is really to have a good cyber hygiene everywhere.
Johan, for that very clear one-liner. And I pass the buck to Lise for her thoughts.
Thank you, Eneken, and good morning to all the viewers. Even though I can't see you, I'm very happy that you joined this event. And also thank you to the organizers of this EU Cyber Forum. I speak to you from the viewpoint of Europe's first technology sector, telecommunications. And today, according to the Forbes 100 Digital Index, telecoms in Europe is a major technology business, and it generates a value added of 137 billion euros per year. And the member companies of ETNO are Telefonica, it's T-Mobile, Orange, Telia companies, and many others. They are the main telecom operators in Europe. First and foremost, I would like to say I was truly inspired by the words of the High Representative Borrell, who spoke just before us this morning. Because today discussing technology also means discussing geopolitics. And I've had the opportunity to recently write an article in Politico Europe about EU is facing a period of risk and opportunity in tech. We see that the US and China are locking horns, and I believe that this means a unique opening for European model to emerge. So what we can do as Europeans is to assert a gentle leadership across markets and policy constituencies. And this is not about protectionism, and that's very important for me to underline, but it's about two main things. For starters, we believe that more in our market players, we should all believe more in our market players, and we should make sure that we can innovate and scale up. And second, we need to do things the European way. So that is putting ethics at the heart of technology, and also to be very mindful on both internet freedom and privacy. And I'll expand quickly on these points later. A second topic you asked us to address today is how the tech and the telecom sector reacted to COVID. And I think there are some very good lessons from the past months, and I would like to share them with you here today. Number one, for me, it's clear that connectivity is more than just another service. In times of lockdown, it was a lifeline to many people. Just think of teachers and students, also businesses, both small and big, and of course, healthcare providers. In the first month of lockdowns, our members did decide to increase, allowances or even give away their services for free. And that's been key to Europe during the COVID pandemic. And lesson number two, is that there is no society that's resilient unless it's fully digitized. So how many people could we have diagnosed in a timely manner if e-health was already a reality across Europe? How many SMEs could have survived the lockdowns if they were on the cloud? We see that the Council and the Commission has put on the table ambitious funding for recovery. And we must also use these funds to digitize countries in Europe. I'd like to address a final point you asked us to address, and that's resilience. And I'd like to put forward three ideas for us to discuss. First and foremost, we must increase investment in new digital networks. If we postulate that society is more resilient when it can access digital services, we need to do everything in our power to ensure that networks are inclusive for all. This is, of course, a matter of supply. Telecom operators need to be put in the condition to invest more and to invest faster in new technologies like 5G and fiber. But governments should do everything they can do to remove regulatory barriers to investment and to incentivize inclusive rollout. The second aspect, when it comes to tech and digital, resilience is also about internet freedom and human rights. And here I'd like to be open with you all. When governments around the world start asking telecom operators to shut down the internet, this is a bad sign for societies. From Hong Kong to Belarus, we have witnessed too many such requests, and they are truly troublesome. We need European diplomacies to work so that internet freedom are not curbed, and so that internet and telecom companies are protected from these bullish requests. So my third and final point on resilience is about technology. And I truly think that the technologies that we're working with will help our societies become more resilient. 5G is a very good example. It will offer opportunities to secure networks end-to-end and to address new vulnerabilities through artificial intelligence. And if I turn to fiber to have another example, it will make capacity broader, and it will constitute and contribute to the stability of the networks. Also, in both of the case of 5G and fiber, I think networks will become more energy efficient and less pollutant. So that's good on sustainability. So I'll pause here. I've shared many views, and I'll leave the stage to more ideas and the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lisa, for reminding us that the resilience is, in a way, a network of its own on top of this connectivity and digitalization. So, Katherine, please over to you. And how have things been, and what have you learned in your country?
Thank you, Eneken. And well, here in Kenya, it's just afternoon. So good afternoon to my fellow panelists and also to all those who participate. Of course, the pandemic was a surprise for us, as it was for all people around the world. And it was something that was emerging without a lot of information about how it would eventually play out in our environment. But I'm glad to say that the Kenyan government responded quickly. And as early as March, we were already taking measures to implement the known methods of mitigating this crisis. And digital was a factor immediately. One, we advised those workers who could to work from home, and we defined 10 categories of essential workers who would have to be in the office or more physically engaged in their jobs. But for everybody who was not involved in these categories of essential services, they were expected to work from home. And this was a new thing. We quickly learned that the home is not really well set up for work. However, in the area of digital, because we already had an extensive mobile network in the private sector, of course, we already had mobile money. I think we are the first and also the highest users of mobile money in the world. It was possible for people to transact from their homes. We learned that there were other issues such as capacity, because no one, even though we knew about teleconferencing, most people had not used that technology extensively. And so we were happy that several global brands immediately responded as a contribution by providing limited but free teleconferencing services. But the same issues that Juhan brought up earlier, such as, nobody had a virtual private network, so we're just using ordinary networks to transact government business as well as other types of business. So yes, there were security challenges. There were also capacity challenges because, as I said, people knew how to use this technology for some things, but not for others. And teleconferencing, for example, has been a whole new realm. For example, are you required to tell people that you're recording a session? Are people careful about who they're allowing into the session? I think now we have waiting rooms and all that. But before, people would just log on. And if the chair was not aware that they needed to look at the list of participants, an intruder could easily get into that session and listen in to government business. And then, of course, as people became more and more dependent on mobile money and remote transactions, this gave opportunity for cyber criminals to come in and attack using social engineering approaches, as well as, usually it's social engineering in our case, which is more prevalent because people just want to basically confidence trick people out of some money. There are many things we've learned. Of course, technology has now moved from the business and formal sector, and it has moved very much into the social sector. That thing is being used for health, it's being used for education, and for all the normal, for shopping and e-commerce, for all the normal issues of life. So this brings in a new group of people into the cyber realm. People who have perhaps been occasionally using cyber, and now their usage is greatly increased, and it's used in very sensitive areas. So the last thing I'll talk about is to say that the cyber resilience goes far beyond the cybersecurity aspect. There is the resilience of the infrastructure. Yes, because energy became an issue, of course, because you do need an energy source, an electricity source. And in Kenya, not all regions have great electricity. And sometimes even the alternative sources of energy are not as resilient as we'd like. So, we can't even begin to talk about cyber resilience if you can't get onto the network at all, because both your personal device and the network in general are dependent on a reliable source of energy. We also became a lot more sensitive because if you're just having a conversation and the network breaks, usually you can wait until later. But if you're doing an examination or you're listening into an important class, or it is a government business meeting and the network breaks, then it can have very deleterious consequences for the actors involved in that. So we quickly realized that the issue of resilient infrastructure, resilient hardware, resilient networks, a resilient legal and policy framework that could deal with all the emerging issues, resilient systems that worked. I'm grateful to the companies that have been involved in issues like teleconferencing, because I can see that they've been trying to improve their systems and improve the security of their systems as issues emerge. And that is very important. Yeah, so I'll stop there. And of course, resilient people who have the capacity to use these networks.
Thank you a lot, Katherine. And let's also now include the perspectives from Malaysia and Singapore. So please, Shariffah, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning everyone over there, and good afternoon to the participants at this part of the world. Thank you for having me today. So I will start by saying that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought two sides of things in terms of digital transition in Malaysia, the positive side as well as the risks that have been mentioned by some of the panelists earlier. I think similar, like any part of the world, COVID-19 has accelerate digital transition or transformation in Malaysia, especially in our health, education, and retail sectors. We had our movement control order, the MCO, that started in the middle of March. It made people find ways and becoming creative to earn incomes in continuing their lives despite some stimulus given by the government. It also has expedited the decision on the proposal of technologies adoptions, especially in the government. Things that have been discussed for the previous years has been really discussed in a very serious manner, saying that how digital technology can assist in mitigating this pandemic, and technology being deployed as powerful tools to combat COVID-19. In the education sector, online classes were being implemented throughout the MCO period. The government agency started to use the government video conferencing facility tools under the government unified communication solutions that were underutilized before. Policies on technology usage in mitigating COVID-19 pandemic were being discussed in a conservative manner. An outbreak management system that have integrated databases from the health facility to lab that have ability for seamless update was being developed. The development of system also assists our Ministry of Health to have clean, accurate, and complete data to predict and forecast the next strategy for Malaysia to undertake in controlling the outbreak. When several local clusters was detected, the Ministry of Health also had to find ways of informing the public of the latest development if the spread of COVID-19 by empowering the community to perform self-assessment to reduce unnecessary visits to healthcare facility. Hence, there was a mobile app that is called My Sejahtera, being developed and being used by all Malaysian citizens, most of the Malaysian citizens and those who reside in Malaysia. It's a voluntary applications that basically assist a lot of our Ministry of Health to predict what will be the next movement. As our MCO right now has been lifted or relaxed, these applications have become a significant tool to assist our Ministry of Health to invite the community to perform participatory assessment. At some instances, it was put as mandatory, especially those that was detected as person under investigation or person under surveillance. The rapid digital transition that is happening also increased the risk and impact of cyber attack as well as malicious activities. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has amplified the existing cyber threat. Our Malaysian National Cyber Coordination and Command Centre under the National Cybersecurity Agency has detected surge in malicious cyber activities, taking advantage of the vulnerabilities in the midst of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, targeting critical infrastructure, including the health sector. And what actually our government has decided? Currently, Malaysia is in the midst of developing our 12th Malaysian plan. And right after the pandemic, our economic planning unit, they reviewed the draft of 12th Malaysian plan to address the issues of resiliency of our nation in terms of economy, a national governance structure that recognizes cybersecurity as horizontal issue that is cut across all initiatives being put in our economic planning. Furthermore, on the 24th of September 2020, which is next week, our Prime Minister of Malaysia will launch our National Cybersecurity Strategy, a national level approach strategy that includes government, private sector, academia, and civil society. This strategy emphasizes on the things that have discussed and mentioned by our panel, the issues of people, the issue of processes, regulation, legislation, as well as the issues of technology. It would really emphasize of the need for a country to have active cyber defense, as well as developing our national cyber security workforce. And I think I will stop now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashidah, and congratulations on the strategy, upcoming strategy, which, as you seek to summarize, will cover many of the aspects that the previous and speakers and yourself have identified as crucial to resilience. So Gwenda, we now turn to you. How do things look from your perspective?
Thanks, Eneken. A very good morning and good afternoon to the listeners who are dialing in for this session. COVID-19 has been called a crisis of a generation, and there is little doubt that COVID-19 has fundamentally changed how we work and live. Many countries, including Singapore, have been affected by the stop work orders and supply chain disruptions. Our workforce had to adapt to working remotely, and society was forced to change our lifestyles almost overnight. With these abrupt changes to how we live, some services that were not considered essential earlier, like online grocery shopping or food delivery services, have now become much more important in the COVID world. As more of how we work, live, and play goes digital, a safer cyberspace is no longer just important for our critical information infrastructure, but also for our businesses and the non-CII sectors. In particular, I'd like to highlight 3 things that are important to us as we learn to cope with COVID. First is the issue of digital inclusion. While some of us have been able to make the necessary adjustments to work, learn, or socialize from our homes because we are digitally connected, it is not the case for some of the elderly and the more vulnerable amongst us. As such, Singapore set up a new SG Digital Office earlier this year to drive our national digitalization movement. So far, the SG Digital Office has recruited 1,000 digital ambassadors to help raise the digital skills of our seniors and to help micro enterprises get on board e-payment solutions. As part of the digital ambassadors outreach efforts, they also impart basic cyber hygiene tips to the seniors and micro enterprises. Second is the issue of doing more to protect our SMEs and the general public as more aspects of our lives and businesses go online. While Singapore's initial focus was on protecting the CIIs, the shifting global digital landscape shows that there is a strong need for Singapore to do more to support Singaporeans and enterprises on cybersecurity. As such, Singapore will soon be launching a safer cyberspace master plan, which will describe how we intend to work with the business, academia, and general public to improve their cybersecurity. The Safer Cyberspace Master Plan represents the government's blueprint for the next 2 to 3 years to better protect Singaporeans and our enterprises in the digital domain. It focuses on upstream measures to secure Singapore's core digital infrastructure, safeguard our activities in cyberspace, as well as empower our population through education and building greater awareness of good cyber hygiene practices. Third, as cyber is a transnational issue, we do need international partnerships. Supranational CIIs in sectors such as banking and finance and aviation are owned by private companies and operate across national borders. This means that an attack on any such supranational CII would have knock-on effects in various countries. Therefore, Singapore believes that it is important to have a rules-based cyberspace. Singapore is actively involved in UN discussions such as the UN Group of Governmental Experts and the Open-Ended Working Group. Singapore sees these discussions as complementary to each other, and we have been actively participating in both processes. It is important that such discussions continue to be located in the UN, where countries, both big and small, have a voice. We also work actively in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, on these issues through the ASEAN Ministerial Conference on Cybersecurity. Singapore is also organizing the 5th Singapore International Cyber Week, or SICW, this year, where we hope to discuss opportunities and risks and how countries can continue to work together to build a resilient cyberspace in spite of COVID. I'm pleased to inform you that SICW will take place virtually from the 5th to 9th of October this year, and I welcome you to join us online to hear from a distinguished lineup of speakers. Given the wide disparity of cyber capacities across countries, there is a need for coordinated cybersecurity capacity building initiatives at both the policy development as well as the technical levels to ensure that countries are adequately competent to implement the rules and norms designed to advance peace and security in an increasingly sophisticated and hyper-connected cyberspace. So it is important that we strengthen international platforms like the Global Forum for Cyber Expertise, which can help better coordinate cyber capacity building initiatives. Singapore is actively doing work in this area through the ASEAN Singapore Cybersecurity Centre of Excellence. And with that, I'll end my brief remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwenda. And you made a really nice way into what I think is my own most interesting aspect of these developments and this exchange of experience, which comes from this very framing of the panel, the global cyber resilience regime. So what I wonder is, based on your remarks, are we ready? Are we ready to build such a regime? So I'd like you all to take another minute or so to just maybe elaborate first. When we think about this cyber resilience globally, what makes cyberspace resilient? So what is the main thing? I think, Juhan, you have clearly said what's it from your perspective, but still, just to put another thought there, what is the main thing that in your mind makes cyberspace resilient? Second, why is this global regime essential? Just to highlight that again. And then I'd ask, as Gwenda was also explaining this cyber diplomacy and policy opportunities and challenges, what from this cyber resilience regime perspective should be the priorities for national, European and global cyber policy to achieve better international cyber resilience. And I would go in the same order that we have already done. So Juhan, please.
Thank you very much for highlighting, I think, these three very important aspects, and also for my co-panelists for sharing their thoughts. I think actually what we've discussed during the first part of this session is really what needs to be done or what can be done at the very micro level, and also at the operational level, and building it up in a very, very high level architecture of cyberspace globally. Now, in my mind, what ties them all up is a risk-based approach. I think this is a kind of a key word when we talk about also global cyber resilience that we should take, and which Europe has taken when building up its own cyber framework. When we have the Network Information Security Directive, we have a Cybersecurity Act that kind of sets the scene for operators of essential service that make sure that our critical infrastructure is cyber secure, to start from this risk-based approach. And this is something that also SMEs, when we talk about economic actors, producers and manufacturers should do. And we as consumers or citizens, when we interact with digital information systems. What are the risks? Do we know what the risks are? And how can we mitigate these risks? Now, this risk-based approach is something that we can do globally, but also nationally, regionally, but individually. And I believe that there are very many ways when we talk about the global level, how this risk-based approach can be promoted. When we talk about the internet, I think Lise mentioned it as well, that we need to ensure that internet will remain free and open space. And I think this is something essential. Internet was not built for cybersecurity, but we need to make sure that it becomes cyber secure without losing its value as a promoter of peace, freedoms, and openness. Nationally, when we talk about economic operators, I think they should be more aware that whenever they put products on the market, be it in Asia, America, Africa, Europe, these products need to be reasonably cyber secure. We are not talking about absolute security. It cannot be attained anyway. But we need to talk about certain level of assurance so that when consumers buy these products or interact with these services, that they can be reasonably assured that these interactions will not be misused, that their data is not going to be hijacked, that their personal privacy is protected. And I think we can look into technical levels of standards or industry best practices that needs to be there in order to put this assurance level in place. Again, in Europe, we have a number of tools to do that. One of them is what the agency now engages is a kind of a building up certification schemes. And then when we go down there in the individual level, then it's like going to the streets. I mean, I'm doing as a citizen, I'm walking around in an urban area. I'm risk averse. I don't step on a street without looking first right and left whether there are cars coming. It's kind of these same things, but these needs to be ingrained in the educational system so that people become aware of the risks and they also can take themselves mitigating action. So I think we need to operate on all these levels, and there is a space for global operation and global cooperation on all these levels, because in the end of the day, the digital space is a global space. It has national spheres, it has regional spheres, but it always has and will hopefully maintain also this global interconnectivity, which is important and is part of the beauty of the modern society.
Thank you, Juhan. Lise.
Thank you, Eneken. And actually, if we look at what constitutes resilience in cyberspace, I would like to echo a bit what Juhan said. It's about cyber hygiene. Like COVID, we have the basic rules of washing hands, social distancing. I think this starts with culture. It's a safety and security culture, and it starts with an awareness. The same was with COVID. We needed to be aware of the virus. Here, we need to be aware of security issues and have it like in everything we do, we need to think security into what we do, because we see traditional sectors becoming digitized, and there you need to have all things included. And so I also believe when we talk about security, of course, the infrastructure is important, but it's all along the value chain. It's the hardware, it's the internet. It's all part of the value chain that needs to be secured and have security think as a main baseline. And again, we all talk about the internet as global, and I think security and the global internet are interlinked. So if we don't have a global internet, it will actually be difficult to have cyber resilience. So here, I'm also worried when I hear the US and China talking about having different internets. And we're already now seeing that there are some blocking and filtering on the internet around the world that gives a different internet and not as open and inclusive as we want it to be. So, but I think all these debates we have on security is important also for anything around technology and digital. So I hope that these debates we have will have a positive spillover on digital policies and politics in general. And again, I think I agree with Gwenda. It's important we have multilateral discussions, so we should include all in whatever we discuss. Very quickly, as the last question, when we talk about the priorities, I think the pandemic taught us there are some very important areas that need to be ensured that they are digitized. And here we should invest in skills and of course also the demand side is important. But if I look at it, it's all about healthcare, it's all about education, and all about the small, medium enterprises. We need to make sure they are included, that they are insured in cybersecurity. So my last point on what should priorities be, it should be skills, skills, skills. Please make sure we all have the skills.
Well, Katherine, what are your quick remarks on these additional inquiries?
Thank you, Eneken. As you know, I am very committed to an international approach. And I think COVID taught us the uneasy marriage between the local and the global. In the local area, we suffered from supply chain issues where the whole world was demanding some specific services and there wasn't enough to go around. And I think many countries realized that there were areas where they needed to build their own capacity and their own ability. And I believe we can also carry that to the cyber domain. And in our case, as a government, we're encouraging local innovation, not only to get appropriate solutions, but also to ensure that we are able to respond at times when the whole world is demanding a certain good or service, and we're far back in the queue. But there's also the international aspect. Many countries almost closed their borders, but we realized that we're more intermingled than we knew. There is no way anymore of completely closing our borders, whether it's to shut out a disease or to shut out a cyber risk. It will cross those borders, whether we like it or not. And therefore, we turned to the international for simple solutions, which many people have talked to, hand washing, social distancing, of temperatures and all that. So we learned that we're a global family, we're all human beings, we're all susceptible to the same risks. And if we work together, we will come to better solutions more quickly instead of retreating into our caves, our individual caves. The last thing I'll say is, again, using health as the example, there's the issue right now that what happens when we get a vaccine? Is it going to be cost effective for everyone? Is it going to be available to everyone in the world? And many people are saying, yes, we have to work together as the international community to make it affordable for everyone and available for everyone. Otherwise, we'll always have pockets of this disease which are available to continue causing problems in all parts of the world. I think I'm a member of the UNGG, and Kenya is also a member of the open-ended working group and the Global Forum for Cyber Expertise. And that is because we believe that if it's going to work for all of us, it has to be available to all of us so that we can all take the right measures, the right protective measures by working together. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Rashidah.
Thank you very much. To respond, my response would be somehow similar, but I think as we can see that cyber resilience, the topic that we discussed today, is much, much more than cybersecurity. It's the ability for us to stand and operate at the same time. And in cyber environment, we have established that there's no such thing as perfect security. And cyber issues is actually a human issues. We could say that there are issues of people and there are issues of technologies as well as the procedures and legislation, but it's the result of behavior of people and tools made by human or people. Hence, it's important for people to understand and have the capability and knowledge as well as skill, just like mentioned by one of the panelists just now, and awareness in terms of mitigating cyber threat. And I would like to borrow I remember when I attend one of the ASEAN cyber norms, you showed us, Eneken, a chart that took into a triangle that shows that what are the problems that we are facing in the issues of threat, cyber threat. Is it a technical problem? Is it a national problem? And is it an international peace and security problem? And in order for us to establish all these things, we need to have the same baseline of understanding of what you need to have in terms of technical skill and awareness and capabilities. And when it escalates to the national level, it needs to have the base of what a country, a state should do in terms of providing the necessary regulations, as mentioned just now, that government should not be the stumbling block, but to facilitate in terms of making sure that the cyber environment are secured. And when you go to the international peace and security issues that goes to the global issues, it relates back to the state, where state might have the same understanding of what cybersecurity should be, of what cyber resilience should be, but it also inherits the geopolitical issue, the issues that escalate before the existence of internet and cyberspace. So having said that, I think I agreed with some of the panels here that says that states as government should play an important role in facilitating, in providing a platform, at least at their jurisdiction, to ensure that the private, public, civil society and everyone are inclusive in the development of cyber resilience, education, awareness, and last but not least, I just want to repeat, skills, skills, skills. Thank you.
Thank you. And Gwenda.
Thanks, Eneken. So you raised 3 questions right at the end, and these were actually really big questions, and it could 2 hours to talk about that, but I'll try to keep my remarks brief. On your third question, which I'll answer first, you asked about what our national policy would be in a post-COVID world. As I mentioned earlier during my opening remarks, I said that Singapore realizes that we can't just protect the core critical information infrastructure. We need to protect the wider cyberspace, which is why we are rolling out a safer cyberspace master plan. And I'll leave you to read the details when that is released. On your first question, you asked about what constitutes resilience in cyberspace, and I'll talk about this from the enterprise point of view. In my view, there are 3 key areas that build resilience in cyberspace, and this is technology, processes, and people. First, let me touch on technology. Technology should really be leveraged to better prevent, detect, and respond to future attacks. These may include stronger encryption for data, heightened monitoring of database activity, or an integrated system to aggregate and analyze threat information in real time. In the event of a cyber attack, rapid isolation and containment of infected systems are also crucial. Second, on processes. Setting the right processes will encourage good cybersecurity practices. For example, processes need to be put in place for regular review of the organization's cybersecurity strategy. This will ensure that the policies governing cybersecurity functions and an organization's reporting structure for the escalation of a cybersecurity incident remain up to date and relevant. Third, on people. The level of cybersecurity awareness of the people in the organization complements the initiatives of technology and processes. A company may have the most advanced technologies in place, but human error and complacency can often be the weakest link. So it's often the reason that many cyber attacks succeed. So I think all 3 elements taken together would build a safer cyberspace, at least at the enterprise level. Next, to address your question on why is an international or global cyber resilience regime important and how do I think can be achieved, I think regional organizations are ideally placed to undertake and lead in the effort to build international and regional cybersecurity and resilience. And ASEAN has worked to coordinate this at the regional level. This is a key priority for Singapore. We began with the 10 million Singapore dollar ASEAN Cyber Capacity Program in 2016, and this has been expanded to a $30 million ASEAN Singapore Cybersecurity Centre of Excellence. And this is something that we will continue to work with extra-regional partners to do. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this extremely rich conversation, and I will now just hop to some of these questions or feedback that we have received from the audience. I think you have all offered a brilliant answer, like good answer to this question. Do you think it's time or is it time right for an international community to work towards a global cyber resilience regime? So there are many good reasons to think about that. And then I think we have also addressed a number of like starting points for this kind of regime. So I think what you have been saying is that it's not just that we are reliable or dependent on these systems, that information communication societies have become a lifeline, and we need to learn again to look at this information ICTs as a driver force for good, for things that we could do better in our societies if we harness these technologies right. And you have said that everybody has to do their part. The individuals need to, so if we translate these skills into what different skills from different stakeholders are we expecting, then we want people to exercise cyber hygiene, yet we are mindful that even good hygiene does not necessarily always mean that you are adequately protected or entirely safeguarded. So it comes to what we expect from companies to put more reliable products out there, more transparent products. And I believe we are also saying that we are putting expectations on governments to lead by example. And in your remarks, what echoes to me is this regional leadership. Well, we have thought of this, meaning we have talked and also thought about this even more European leadership to achieve a global better approach to using ICTs. And at the same time, we see these other regions doing the same thinking, that the best of what they have learned could be shared and developed further at international level. So there is so much more that has been said, meaning if I were to pick up a couple of highlights for me, first, cyber resilience is so much more than cybersecurity. And to get to an international dialogue, we need to maybe rethink and engage many more tools and processes and venues and also forms of leadership than we have so far been able to do. And then to pick up again from the audience, it's not only that we have been receiving questions. There is also a thought from Zambia, which goes to maybe we could compel platform providers to have to play into this better hygiene by maybe developing this pop-up or otherwise reminding people how important it is that they understand the very services and technologies that they are using. And then maybe also something to just leave us with without answering that question is this how COVID on the one hand has demonstrated that we are very dependent on ICTs, but on the other hand, it also comes at the time of a perfect storm in geopolitical realm. Now, I know that Natalie has still planned for us before we entirely close. So Natalie, over to you.
Thanks, Eneken, for this great summary. I just wanted to highlight our visual storyteller who made a visual summary of this panel. And I think we can see this right now. And Eneken, could you maybe summarize a little bit what you see here and some important aspects that you think have been highlighted from the panel?
I see a perfect panel here, and I want to thank this panel from my side. Well, some things that I didn't maybe pick up, but I'd like to highlight based on this very nice graph is this risk-based approach. Well, I think we all have realized that we are not rich enough to overinvest, and therefore a risk assessment would help us to adjust our both regional, organizational, national, and international investments, direct them right. We heard skills, and I think this work together is a very nice lead into a lead thought for us to be mindful and remind ourselves of that the different stakeholders, when put together behind one task, can achieve much more than governments alone, or let's say the peace and security community alone. Well, cyber hygiene is very graphic, and I think it's a very good way of maybe even developing an icon and follow our Zambian colleagues' advice on how to remind people to exercise cyber hygiene. And that goes to this my far right, which says people. And I want to thank all the panelists as wonderful people to discuss this theme. And I want to thank all organizers, the audience, everybody who needs to be part of this better, more resilient, more secure, more safe cyberspace. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Eneken.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We hope to see you again in an hour and a half. Okay, then not.